Right. So this topic, I was planning to cover it up last week, but it was so tiring, so I knew I can't put this around. So we will start doing it now. Right. So this is the under corporate governance practices, there are three sections. We studied about the board, right? Overall board and the role and professional development and all that. That is one part. Then last week we studied board memberships. Under that we looked at the chairman, the CEO, executive directors, and non-executive directors. So now we are coming to the last part of corporate governance practices, which are board committees. Here we are going to study about the three subcommittees that are mainly there, which are nomination, audit, remuneration. May tuna compulsory. Apart from that, there is a risk committee, right? So we have to study this, plus somehow we need to cover up Sri Lankan corporate governance code. Now, we actually have to look at this in Sri Lankan code, what we have newly already. Okay, so that is the plan. We have to finish all that today because today is the last class which I am taking. So next week we will start risk management. It's done by Himan. Okay. So when it's come to these committees, it says here, many companies operate a series of board subcommittees responsible for supervising specific aspect of governance. So these committees are appointed to take over or look after specific aspect of governance. So when it comes to governance, what they are looking after are very important things under governance. Okay. Operations of a committee system does not observe the main board of its responsibility for the areas covered by board committees. And මේ committee දැම්මා කියලා මේ committee එකකින් කොයිම වෙලාවකවත් the main responsibility that the board has cannot be underestimated. Right? Board is the superior one. So all these subcommittees are there to support the board in certain activities. හරිද? මේ board එක කියන එක කොයිම වෙලාවකවත් undervalue වෙන්නේ නැහැ, though you have subcommittees. These subcommittees are there to support the board on certain core areas. Otherwise, what these boards are doing needs to be taken up by the main board. Then on මේ committees වල කරන මේ task ටික needs to be taken over by the board, and board doesn't have time to look after these important areas. That is why you have subcommittees. Make a career committee making, it needs to be taken care by fully the board. But board doesn't have time. That is why these are but areas you can't neglect. The governance system may handle areas take care of. So if you don't take care, then that means there is issue in your governance system. So the sentence talks about that. Operations of a committee system does not absolve the main board of its responsibilities for the areas covered by the board committee. However, good use of committees seem to have had a positive effect on the governance of many companies, right? By having these committees, they make the governance stronger. Because when you take the role done by each committee, that these committees support to ensure this company is run in a proper way. Right? When have a subcommittee task governance system is stronger. So if you don't have these subcommittees, that shows that there is a lapse in their governance system. There is an issue in their governance system. Okay? So this is having these committees shows a sign that this monkey one Hades report governance, what are the subcommittees they have. So by showing all these, they are trying to show the public yes, we are a company which has good governance system inside the organization. Okay. It's found evidence that committees had given assurance that important board duties were being discharged rigorously. Right? So through these committees, what we are showing is what board needs to be done now being given to these committees to do it in the rigorous manner. And that's make a board. But by appointing these committees, you are ensuring that committee will 100% focus on that and do the task rigorously in the right manner. Okay. So if you take the committees, nomination, so you can see they are responsible for recommending the appointments of new directors to the board. Second one, audit. Make committees of the audit committee is my strongest. Right? They have so many things to overlook. And focus there. But when it's come to audit committee, you will see that they have quite a lot of area to cover under them. Okay? So arguably, the most important committee responsible for liaising with external audit, supervising the internal audit, reviewing the annual accounts and internal control. See how many tasks they have, right? So many things. Therefore, you need to know what they do under each of those areas very well, right? Internal audit, external audit, making sure your financial statements are prepared in the right way, as well as internal controls. So, manage overlook kara, right? Supervise karane is audit committee. Remuneration committee, as the name implies, look over the remuneration of the board of directors and the executive team. Last one, the risk committee, because risk is also a very important part when it comes to governance. How far your organization is taking care of the risk aspect. Right? You will have a separate committee to take over risk. Right? So when you are studying, and I have always repeated this, risk committee because having these committees also very expensive to maintain. Corporate governance that increases the cost. Always remember, right? Adhering, complying with these codes, having these committees, corporate governance it adds to your cost. Right? There should be administration staff, there should be a payment to be done. The committees are not getting a board member to pay. Right? Make committee participate. They are spending time by fulfilling the committee task. Right? So they don't board meeting. So their participation in the committees, you have to do another pay. So everything adds up to your cost. So more you have good corporate governance practices means more cost. Then what you compromise is your profit. The corporate governance, we have to strike a balance between what are the things we can have in our organization. What is the way we can have that in our organization? That is where the innovation comes. Can you remember on the principles, one aspect was innovation. How do you comply to that? Because we don't have a rule-based approach, we have a principle-based approach. So the guideline with the Tiyanakota, how we follow that is up to the company. So the company, by looking at the cost of all these compliances, will need to decide what is the best for the company. Right? Committee cost to manage it, most of the time, many of those companies doesn't have a risk committee. The risk committee task is taken over by audit committee. The risk committee you can't stop. Somebody needs to take care of that. So the only place that you can hand over that is to the audit committee. There are some companies do not have many companies do not have a risk committee. The task of risk management is taken over by the audit committee. Right? manage can't cover it, supervise can't cover it into committee can do. But if your companies come into so much of risk, and risk is a key part, especially when it comes to banks, financial institutes, and all that, risk plays a key role. In those companies, having the risk committee compulsory. They have separate risk committee. Okay, so that is how the structure of those companies. And the last one, it says the Higgs report recommends that no one individual should serve all committees. Most reports recommend that committees should be staffed by non-executive directors and preferably independent non-executive directors. Right? So for these committees, you should not have same people in all the committees. You have to have a mix of directors being seated in these committees. And when you are selecting, always preference is given to non-executives. Even in non-executive, they should be independent non-executive. And here non-executives like independent dependent. Right? The classic example is Lanka in Hades. Lanka in May annual report Kalik annual report Lanka was dependent non-executive director. And non-executive director, day-to-day operations involved in that. He is a non-executive. But he is not independent because his interests are there in the company. So they are shares ID, right? He is not interested. He is categorized dependent non-executive. There are non-executives are dependent non-executive, independent non-executive. Okay, non-executives are dependent, independent. They go when you put executives are always dependent because they are part of the company. But non-executives, when you take, there are independent non-executive, there are non-independent. Non-independent means they don't involve in day-to-day operations, but they have interest in the company. They have shareholding. Independent non-executive means they don't have shares. They only come and sit in the board and look after the board functions, board tasks. The committees independent non-executive director. So we'll take one by one the nomination committee. Right. So nomination committee, appointed under it, right? So nomination committee needs to understand that for the board, what sort of people needs to come and sit in the board. Right? They need to understand what sort of for this board, what is lacking. As I told you, you may find that if you are going for a new region or if you are going for new product, sometimes that is your strategic plan, the movement, right? Corporate plan, top management business plans are how the corporate strategy, business strategy. Corporate strategy board at the top level. Business strategy CEO, yes. Right? The corporate strategy they look at they go fast where we are going to move. Then you see that it's better to have some person in the board which has these skills identify them. So they search who are the people known in this area. So the nomination committee always in the search for board members that you can bring to the board. Right? How the game of board executives who can be promoted to the board. Right? Again, who are the people who can come into the board? And also, these board members, I told you, non-executive can't stay more than 9 years. They need to be changed. Right? 9 years old in the back. You have to discontinue. Then you need to understand who are the new members that you need to bring. So all those things needs to be tackled by the nomination committee. It says that in order to ensure the balance of the board is maintained, corporate governance codes recommend that the board set up a nomination committee made up wholly or mainly of independent non-executive directors to oversee the process of board appointments and make recommendation to the board. So they are the people who nominate people to the board as board members. Monkey one board members are appointed with the Kiyatina. What are the ways? What are the ways? There are one or two ways. Huh? So බලාගෙන ඉඳලා නම් තියෙනවා අහගෙන ඉඳලා නේද? කොහොමද බලාගෙන ඉඳලා ඔක්කොලා මන් දිහානේ බලාගෙන ඉන්නේ. So you all have බලාගෙන ඉඳලා හැබැයි අහගෙන ඉඳලා කියන එක තමයි ප්‍රශ්නේ. What are the two ways that you appoint board members? First one was to elect through election. මතකද කිව්වා? First one is you will appoint people through election. Second one is through appointment. Election process එක කොහොමද වෙන්නේ? The nomination board, nomination committee will propose, and that goes to the AGM. Then stakeholders will vote. Then you appoint. Right? Then they will be appointed to the board. That is through election. The other one is appointment. When do that happen? If the AGM is very far to conduct, when the AGM is long way to conduct, if you want to fulfill a board position immediately, then you will do the appointment, right? The board එක appoint කරගන්නවා. The AGM එක තියන්න කල් යනවා. So you want to fulfill a position, then you will appoint. So then nomination committee will propose someone, then the board will have discussions and they will appoint that person. That is the second way. So the appoint කරන්න පුළුවන් board එකට. එහෙම නැත්නම් I told you there are two other dominant stakeholder can appoint someone to the board, right? That is the second one. Third one is if it is governed by some sort of a statutory authority, that authority also can appoint someone, right? So the board members can be appointed in these two ways. Ekko electment or election එකේ නැත්නම් through appointment. Okay? So when the nomination committee is proposing someone to the board, they need to consider these things, right? First, they need to look at what is the balance between executive and non-executives. So in the company, what sort of a policy are we having? Now, when you look at the Haley's case, who was dominating? The executives, right? Executives are altogether 10 members were there. Out of that, 6 were executives and 4 were non-executives. They showed that through graphs and all that, right? So that means that in that company, the structure is like that: 10 members, 6 and 4. Executives dominates, right? So the nomination committee needs to understand what the balance should be. Then the skills, knowledge and experience possessed by the current board. What sort of knowledge, from which sector are they representing? What sort of skills are they having? And the experience. The need for continuity and succession planning. Are you going to continue with them, especially when it's come to non-executive? And what should be the succession planning? Are you going to change? Are you going to find someone to the board? The desirable size of the board. Nominate කරනකොට හැමතිස්සෙම අපේ size එක බලන්න. More the size, more the cost always. Right? Better you have broader committee, right? ගොඩක් members ලා ඉන්නවා නම් හොඳයි, but ගොඩක් members ලා ඉන්නවා කියන්නේ costly. So you need to identify who should be the best people to be in this board. The lazy that, right? It's not easy as we think. We have to bring the right people. Otherwise, they are the people who are identifying in the strategic move. The future, where this company should move. You bring the board not just to sit there and eat the piece of cake and go, no. They are the people who should make the decision. So you have to bring the right blend. Otherwise, companies can't run, guys. Hari directors la හිතේ නැත්තම් hari අය අරගෙන ආවේ නැත්තම් අපි expect කරන role එක ඒගොල්ලෝ කරන්නේ නැත්තම් big issue. right? The need to attract board members from a diversity of backgrounds. So when you are attracting, when you are bringing people to the board, you need to bring them not from one area. From accounting profession right? Lawyers. So according to your business, you need to identify what sort of expertise they should have in the board. Right? Or tennis board cultural sectors represent because this is their holding company. Sorry, their main company. Right? So they were having people from hospitality, they were having people from other areas, finance, likewise. They were bringing people from diverse areas. Because that's what they want to run this organization in the right manner. Right? The nomination committee should ensure that appointment to the board are made using objective criteria. Objective criteria. Any idea of what's the meaning of objective criteria? What do you feel? What is objective criteria? When you are selecting members to the board, you should select based on objective criteria. Subjective opposite bias. Subjective personal judgments, bias. So when we are selecting people to the board, it should not be based on subjective criteria or bias. අපි checklist එකක් තියලා ඒ checklist එක nomination committee එක ඔක්කොම evaluate කරන්න ඕන. So you will have same checklist where everyone will put their comments on same criteria. Again, objective means always you have to look at facts and figures, not based on personal judgments or biasness. Right? Mama අපි criteria list එකක් හදලා nomination committee එකේ ඔක්කොම ඒ criteria list එක fill කරන්න ඕන. So the same point you have to look at how everyone value that. Right? So if you look at professional qualification, then number of experience, so those are called objective criteria where you can measure someone's performance and select that person to the board, not based on personal judgments or personal preferences. Right? Have certain measurements when you are selecting a person to measure whether that person is suitable or not. Right? Number of experience, professional qualification, the number of consultancies we've done. Objective criteria is right? Then everyone can evaluate on that. If it was subjective, very difficult to appoint someone. I may prefer, the other person may not prefer, but objective numbers right? Objective things are always facts and figures. Right? Then my decisions are not biased. We all put the facts that we know. Okay? However, the criteria should not be so restrictive that it limits too greatly the number of candidates. If you set the criteria as very high, high criteria, we might not be able to select the people because everyone is not having the criteria. Likewise, for the board, you are going to appoint PhD candidates. So that is a very high criteria. Can you understand? That high criteria, you may not be able to select the people because everyone is not having PhDs. But now, corporate sector, many are having PhD because they are doing DBAs. Right? Academics are the ones who does the PhD, but the people who are in the corporate sector, they do the DBA, Doctor in Business Administration. Right? But there's a difference between these two. PhD is always very philosophical and more into theory, and you study deep into theory. But DBA is not that. It's a very practical where you study a practical issue and do your research. There's a big gap, but both are under Sri Lankan qualification frameworks puts into one scale. That is SLQF 10. Right? That is the level that both are being put. But the gravity of those two are totally different. PhD academics are going to PhD gravity BBA post work 2 years research right? But PhD hardcore, new findings, very difficult to pass that. There is a difference, but Sri Lankan qualification framework put both the qualifications at the same level. I don't know why. Right? So likewise, when you're selecting someone, you can't have very high criteria. It should be something realistic. So this is about the nomination. Now we come to the most important committee, audit committee. So you can see that make audit committee in and out, but they are doing very challenging because you have these committee handle so many things. So you need to know very clearly what are these different tasks they are doing. An audit committee of independent non-executive directors should liaise with external audit, supervise internal audit, review the annual accounts and internal control. So 4 tasks are there mainly. They need to connect with external auditors. They need to supervise the internal audit. They need to review the accounts and make sure your accounts are prepared in the right way. And the process of making the accounts are done in the right way. And the last one is internal control. Make a supervised audit committee. Audit committee are now compulsory for companies trading on many stock exchanges. If you review now, you're going to study Sri Lankan corporate governance framework. For us, the companies listed on Colombo Stock Exchange needs to have audit committee. It's a must. Compulsory. Ape code compulsory nahi. Corporate governance code, which was made by Sri Lanka Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka, 2017 is the latest one. It is not mandatory. Ekatiyana clauses mandatory nahi. Through other ways, certain things have become mandatory. So one way is this one, right? Audit committee has become a mandatory requirement through what company listing. Api public company ekak wenawa nan api audit committee එක compulsory. ඒක corporate governance code එකෙන් නෙමෙයි compulsory කරේ. මොකෙන්ද compulsory කරේ? Listing rules. You will realize today certain things code is voluntary, but through different mechanisms, certain corporate governance practices have made compulsory. One place is this one, right? Through listing rules. List करना क्या है? Stock market के company का public quoted करना. Public quoted vendor they need to appoint audit committee. The must. So through that route, they have made the audit committee compulsory. Then it says, in order to be effective, the audit committee has to be well staffed. The UK Smith report recommends that audit committee should consist entirely of independent non-executive directors and excluding the chairman, and should include at least one member with significant and recent financial expertise. So many or most of the time, chartered accountants will be sit at this place. Audit committee. Board again the chartered accountants audit committee because they are updated with the auditing knowledge which is needed for external, internal audit, internal controls, and ensuring the right preparation of financial statements. Right? The Singapore Code suggests that at least 2 members should have accounting or related financial management expertise. So when you are suggesting people to the audit committee, they need to have a strong background coming from finance and accounting. Okay, so we'll take their tasks one by one. So this is the first one. Right. The main duties of the audit committee. First one, review of financial statement and control systems. Here, we'll take what? The committee should review both quarterly, if published, or annual account. Quarterly published, they have to look after that. But annually, they do publish, so they have to review. Before they publish, they have to review. This should involve assessment of the judgments made about the overall appearance and presentation of the accounts, key accounting policies, and major area of judgments. So they need to look how these accounts are being presented. That's the first one. How these accounting policies, how they are being passed, right? How the treatments are being done, accounting treatments are being done, and major area of judgment, right? You need to look at, they need to look at the key areas where they need to focus on, major area of judgment. So before publishing, they need to take care of these things with regards to annual reports, right? Their appearance and presentation, how the accounting policies are being passed, or how the accounting treatments are being done, and major area of judgments where major critical components in the annual report of balance sheet items, related party transactions. So those kind of things, which are major areas that you have to make judgments, they need to look over those things. Apart from that, as well as reviewing the accounts, the committee's review should cover the management control system, which includes budgetary system and performance measurement system. I hope you know the difference between management controls and internal controls. Done all the way, sir? Done all the way, sir. What are management controls? What are the management controls? Any idea? No? Anyone? No, that was done. Management controls. Level management control. Management accounting कराने हम subject रहती पर ये management accounting हो रहे ये वाला देखा है ये थी ना ये management accounting कौन है हाँ होने ये कि management accounting investigate करते हैं first time management accounting क्या है one part तो which year did you study second year first year second year बना दिया करते हैं first year में ಅದಕ್ಕೆ variances with budgets with performance measurement tigre करते हैं दी बैक ये no a subject is management accounting में करे only that subject you did ये वो करना है costing ඇතුළේ අපිට you know that you have two branches in accounting huh? What are those two branches? Financial accounting and management accounting. So what is financial accounting? Huh? What is financial accounting? Bukan dua lagi degree ya? Ah? Bukan dua lagi degree ni apa lah? Ah? Bachelor of Science in Applied Accounting. Didn't know what he meant. Right? So what is financial accounting? Ala. Yeah. Financial accounting is what the chartered accountants are good at. That is preparation of financial statements. So CFOs la වැඩිපුර කරන්නේ ඕක නේද? Right? Accounting treatment standards pass කරලා accounting හරියට හදන එක. That is their major task. So the CFO's traditional role had always been the preparation of financial statements. ඒක තමයි ඒගොල්ලෝ කරන්නේ. ඒකනේ ඔය double entry කියලා primary books වලට ගිහිල්ලා ඒක balance කරලා key account sorry primary books වලින් key accounts වලට ගිහිල්ලා key accounts වල double entry එක දාලා trial balance වල ඕකනේ කරන්නේ නේද? ඔය process එක තමයි financial accounts වල කරන්නේ. Right? So what is the other branch? Management. So management accounting does what? Management account is the part of management. What is management accounting? That is part of management. Management accounting does is for managers to make decisions, they need information. So that information is provided by management accounting. So that financial accounting is for publishing your accounts, but management accounting is for internal purposes where management wants to make decisions, you have to give information. What are the 5 functions in your organization? You have production, marketing, HRM, finance. So we'll take those 4. So we have 4 managers like that. I am a marketing manager. What sort of decisions I have to make? I am the marketing manager. Huh? What sort of decisions do I have to make? If I am the marketing manager, I need to know the pricing, right? I need to know how my competitors are behaving. I need to forecast what should be the demand for my products. In I do the pricing, forecasting, techniques information right? You take the production manager. What are the decisions he needs to make? Production manager decisions how much the cost of the production should be, right? How much I have to spend to get it from my suppliers, right? So those are the how much volume do I have to produce? Those are the decisions. So you use the all costing techniques for that, right? Process KI, product costing KI, job costing KI, costing of production manager. So he needs costing information. So production, job costing, batch costing, process, contracting, the costing methods, right? So he needs that information. So for him to make those product cost decisions, he needs to use this. So the advanced version of those costing things are called the activity-based costing. Alatina ABC, right? Right. Then you have the HRM guy. What sort of information he needs? He has to make the performance evaluation he needs to do, right? He needs to identify the training needs of the organization. Then he has to do what? He may have to do investment appraisal, may training the benefits and investment. Then he has to look at cost, not investment appraisal, cost benefit analysis. Right? So those things are the decisions he has to make. So the managerial position decisions you have to use different tools. That is what they are using. Management accounting. Costing tools are being used by the production manager. The pricing decision, competitor analysis, customer analysis, right? Those tools will be used by the marketing manager. එයාගේ decisions වලට ඕනේ. ඒතකොට එයා ඔය එකක්වත් දන්නේ නැහැ. Marketing manager කියන එක නා යන්නේ accounting background එකෙන් නෙවෙයි. Right? ඒක කවුද මේව හදලා දෙන්නේ? කවුද මේ information compile කරලා යාට දෙන්නේ? Management accountant. අපි සීමා qualified වෙලා යන්නේ මේව හදන්න. Right? අපිට සීමාවල උගන්වන්නේ මේව techniques. එතකොට අපිව recruit කරන්නේ job එකක් මේ information අරගෙන ඒ manager ඕන information එක අපි හදලා දෙන්න. None of these managers are capable. How the production flow එකේ ඉන්නේ manager qualification එක කොහෙන්ද එන්නේ ළමයි? Production manager මොන වගේ background එකකින් දෙන්නේ? Production manager ඉන්නේ engineering background එකකින්. So engineering background එකකින් එන කෙනා financial information ගන්න දන්නවද? නෑ. ඒකට එයාට ඕන costing ටික හදලා accountant, management accountant දෙන්න ඕන. He will look at and make the decisions. Right? Marketing managers are coming from marketing backgrounds. They have done SIM and they have done bachelors in marketing and all that. So they don't know any numbers and they hate numbers. Marketing people hate numbers. Right? So for him to make decisions, The accountant needs to know what are the tools he needs to use them, get the information. And on top of that, the accountant's role, right? Finance and accounting, what is their key role? They have to make the budget. Have organization make a budget. The budget for the key responsibility lies with whom? Accounting function, right? So they go to my guide make other name. So the budgeting system, they have to make. So to make management controls right? Budgeting system, performance measurement system, the system which managers use for decision making. Right? So the main systems overlook කරන්න ඕනේ. මොනවාද පාවිච්චි කරන systems? කොහොමද performance evaluate කරන්නේ? කොහොමද budgets හදන්නේ? So these things also needs to be looked by the audit committee. Clear the difference between management controls? Right? Management controls means these techniques, budgeting, performance measurement, then other techniques. There are so many variance analysis. So those are called management accounting techniques. So those will be taken overlooked by the audit committee. It's just going beyond what is needed because I'm a management accountant, so I love to take management accounting. Right? So management accounting, when you take, there are 3 core parts. Right? Following core part is the costing part. Management accounting costing, right? So that major part is costing. It is the traditional thought of management accounting. But the management accounting from the industrial revolution time, so the production was the biggest focus during that time. Mass production, so the production decision ඒක නිසා තමයි මේ costing කියන part එක core part එකක් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. Right? ඒක ඇතුලේ under costing so many costing systems are there. So that is one core part. Second core part of management accounting is planning and controlling. Planning and controlling is where managers need to plan as well as after implementing the plan, they need to look at how you have done it and take the corrective action. ඒක තමයි planning and control. A section එකට තමයි එන්නේ ඔයගලන්ගේ budgeting, right? Variance analysis, performance measurements, balance scorecard, all those things comes under planning and control. The new addition to that is accountants needs to create value addition, right? Sorry, managers needs to create value. So to create value, they have to make decisions for value creation. To create this value creation, sorry, to take these value creation decisions, they have to use pricing techniques. They have to use customer profitability analysis, competitor analysis, and value creation purpose. But management accounting වල මේ components තුන තමයි තියෙන්නේ. මොනවා study කරත් මේ components තුන. Costing, planning and control, and value creation. The value creation වලට තමයි අර pricing අර මම කියපු විදිහට management accounting syllabus එක ඔයගොල්ලෝ ඉගෙන ගන්න මේ tools. Right? So මේගොල්ලෝ මෙතන බලන්නේ while looking at their financial statements and their preparation, they also need to look at management controls, which mainly include budgetary systems and performance systems. Right? So they need to look at that. The system should also highlight developments that may require, if there are variances, when they are evaluating the performances, they may be using variance analysis. So if there are variances, the audit committee needs to look at why these variances happen and what has gone wrong there. Right? The actions. The audit committee has to look whether actions has been taken over. Right? May topic may review of financial statements and control system as 2 things. First one, they have to make assessments and judgments about the overall appearance presentation of the financial accounts, how the accounting policies and treatments being done, and look at the major area of judgment. The second part is they have to look at, overlook or review the management control system. The management control system has mainly the budgeting part and the performance evaluation part. They need to review those two, and they also need to look at whether actions are taken for the variances and they have been communicated to the people. Right. Now we are coming to the second basic component of the audit committee. That is review of internal control. Right? Internal control means what? The management controls are done. Management control and internal controls are two different things. Management control means the controls used, the control mechanisms used by managers when they are making managerial decisions. Internal controls means the controls that you have for processes inside the organization. Those are called internal controls, right? Controls that you have set up for the processes of your organization. That is what is called internal controls. Right? You want to make sure things are happen in the right way. Therefore, you have internal controls. The transaction authorize right? Their production flow, how the production flow should happen. You have certain internal controls, certain checkup. So, when employees are doing something, there are internal controls that you have to follow. So, those things are what is called internal controls. The audit committee should play a significant role in reviewing the internal controls. So what are the things they have to do? First one, committee members can use their own experience to monitor continually the adequacy of internal control systems in managing risk. Right? Who needs to set up internal controls? How the internal control set up? How the internal controls done? CEO and the managers, because when you are heading a section, you know what sort of controls you will need. So those people are the ones who set up internal controls. That those what have been set up will be overlooked. Monitor. They don't set up any internal controller. Don't ever misunderstand that they are setting the internal controls. They are not setting the internal controls. What they do is monitor the internal controls. Okay? So first, through their experience, they have to judge whether this company has adequate internal control systems to manage the risk. Right? So when they are checking whether the internal controls are adequate, they have to look at control environment, managers' attitude towards control, and overall internal control. Then may controls that is the right? That is what it says. Monitor the adequacy of internal control systems that you have to manage the risk. What is the second one? Second one is the audit committee should cover legal compliance and ethics. It has been set legally for our company. If there are regulations being set that we have to follow, right? The audit committee review should cover legal compliance and ethics. For example, if the listing rules or environmental legislation has these things you have to comply with, so audit committee needs to ensure those things is this company is doing it the right way. Right? Legally there are compliances. The committee we need to look at. Committee members should check that there are systems in place to promote compliance. They should review reports on the operation of codes of conduct and investigate violations. Right? So they need to look at what are the ways that these compliances are fulfilled. Right? Environmental compliances are fulfilled. Right? They will have to overlook. And they should review reports on operation of code of conduct. Right? Ethics part legal compliance and ethics. So if the company is having a code of conduct, corporate code of conduct, organizations are having, right? Ethics scale, corporate code of conduct at companies. Sign when you join the particular organization. We are taking care of the environment, we are taking care of the community, our ethics are these ones, this is how we behave. Those are called corporate code of ethics. So they need to look at whether these code of ethics are in operation, and if there are any violations, they will have to investigate. That is their second point under review of internal controls. What is the third one? The audit committee must actively monitor the effectiveness of control over financial reporting. Financial reporting report make it information record the process they have to look. That is what they are telling. They have to ensure there are proper internal controls in the process of financial reporting. How you get the information, how you authorize it, how you record it. So there should be then and there internal controls for that process, financial reporting process. So specifically, the audit committee needs to ensure that there are proper internal controls being set for the financial reporting part. Because if the financial reporting information is not having right controls, that means the information can be not the accurate information, right? There can be questions on reliability of those information, right? Api hari control systems dala naththam reporting process ekedi apita hari information inne minisu ඕන විදියට manipulate කරන්න පුළුවන්, change කරන්න පුළුවන්, right? So you need to ensure that in your financial reporting process, controls are being set at the right places. And always, they need to demonstrate professional skepticism when doing so. In transactions, whenever, record whenever, skepticism එකෙන් බලන්න ඕනේ. මෙතන ප්‍රශ්නයක් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. මෙතන issue එකක් තියනවා. තියෙන හැමදේම ඒ විදිහට accept කරන්න බෑ. මොකද ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ main duty එකක් financial reporting are done in the right manner. So in order to ensure that, they have to make sure the right internal controls have been set for this process, and they need to have skepticism in looking at the things. A transaction record how it be recorded? It should be recorded in this manner. Why this happened like this? Financial expertise they have the knowledge. So they should be always in the skepticism mindset to inquire if they feel the numbers are not being represented in the right way. They have experience, no? So certain transactions, this cannot happen, this number can't come in this way, they will come with their experience. That is what we want, right? They have to use those skepticism, judgmental way of looking at things, right? The main number experience in accountants regular numbers annual reports preparation audits they know if you have passed in this way, this can't happen. Well, experience certain partners, they will say no. Right? So that skeptical mindset we have to break. What are the other things? The committee should also address the risk of frauds, ensuring that employees are aware of risk and that there are mechanisms in place for staff to report fraud. So under internal controls, since we are focusing on internal controls here, the staff needs to be very aware of frauds. Frauds are the monada dena danduwam, right? What are the punishments and what are the ways they can raise if their fraud is happening? So those things audit committee needs to look over, right? The committee should address the risk of fraud, ensuring employees are aware of risk and there are mechanisms for people to report on frauds. And when there is a reporting on something like that, they have to investigate. Right? The next one is, each year the committee should be responsible for reviewing companies' statement of internal controls prior to the approval of the board. So every year in your annual report, you have to give a statement on your internal controls. So that statement comes from the audit committee, and they have, because they are writing a statement on how the internal controls of the organization is. Right? So that statement should be reviewed by them. Next one, the committee should consider the recommendation of the auditors in the management letter and management response. Like auditors are internal controls issues managers. Right? The auditors comments on the internal controls and how managers have responded to those things is the next thing they have to look at. Right? Last one is, the committee may play a more active supervisory role. For example, reviewing major transactions for reasonableness. Some other transactions, especially the related party transactions when they are happening, how this transaction was recognized, what are the controls being used. Internal party transactions are not related party transactions, very tricky transactions. How these things were passed, how they are being recorded, what sort of internal controls being used. So those things also they need to take care of. The pain on internal controls, they have how many? Altogether 7 things. 7 things internal controls. They have to monitor the adequacy of internal controls, whether the internal controls are sufficient to manage the risk. Second one, they need to look at all the legal compliances are being met and the ethics are being implemented. Right? Third one is, they have to ensure there are proper control system for financial reporting process. But only make keywords. I don't care. But that keyword should be there in your answer. Right? The keywords. Those are the words I have put it in bold. Right? Then you have to ensure your employees are aware of frauds and they have way to report frauds. Next one, they have to review the internal control statement made before the board approval. Then they have to look at the recommendation of auditors with regards to internal controls have been implemented. Right? Actions are taken. Last one, they have to have more active supervisory role for major transactions, such as related parties transaction for their reasonableness. So those are the things under review of internal control. Then review of risk management. May third task. May go on to better detail. Right? May area stuck in area. Right? Audit committee, as I said, they have lot of tasks. So risk what are they have to do? If you don't have a risk committee, they have to take care of risk. No, I told you at the beginning. So when they are taking care of risk, these are the 2 things that they have to look at. Right? They have to look at whether the company has a formal policy for risk management. Every company should have a policy for risk management, which we call as risk philosophy. Right? Company risk policy it shows this company doesn't care about the risk that much. Because when you have a policy means, to develop the policy itself, you have to give a great thought. Policy එකක් හදන්න බෑ ලේසියි. ඒතර policy එකක් තියනවාද කියන එක, right? Confirming that there is a formal policy for risk management and that the policy is backed and regulated and monitored by the board. Policy එකක් තියනවා වගේම මේ policy එක අනුව වැඩ කරනවාද කියන එක. You have to make sure by regularly monitoring. The committee should also review the arrangement, including training for ensuring that managers and staff are aware of their responsibilities with regards to risk. Not only having the policy, for the staff you need to give training. Now the risk here, on the job risk here, right? Job, again, production flow, again, in the Kulan risk here. The regular train karano. Managers have train karano when they are making a decision, how they have to factor the risk into consideration, right? So those training are being done properly. The audit committee needs to look after under the risk management. Then you have committee members should use their own knowledge of the business to confirm that risk management is up to date to reflect current position and strategy. The extent of their work may depend on whether there is a separate risk management team. Always you will learn when the next topic starts, when it comes to risk management. Risk management should go with the strategy of the company. Now, you have to understand that if the company wants to stay safe as they are, risk හැබැයි අපි movement එකක් වෙනවා නම් අපි change එකක් වෙනවා නම් we know that if we are going to stay in the same way you are not going to earn anything new. එහෙම නේද? අපි කරගෙන යන දේම කරගෙන ගියොත් අපිට additional මුකුත් හම්බ වෙන්නේ නැහැ. So the additional mukuts, if we want to get, you have to make a movement, you have to make a change, you have to take a risk. When you take a risk only, you can get something more. So therefore, your strategy, your movement, what you are going to do differently will always create a risk for you, right? So this strategy and the risk that will come, you have to balance, right? Api challenge එකක් ගත්තේ නැත්නම් අපි අලුත් strategy එකක් කරේ නැත්නම් අපිට risk එකක් නැහැ. අපි අලුත් දෙයක් කරනවා කියන්නේ there is always a risk involved. You may go for a new product, you may go for a new market, you may approach a new set of customers. Everything has a risk. You don't know where the sure නැහැ මේක හරියද නැද්ද කියන the risk එකක් තියෙනවා. The risk එකක් එක්ක තමයි අපි change එකකට යන්නේ. ඒකට always need to ensure that whatever the risk reflect the current position and strategy. So under risk management, these are the things you have to look at, right? Audit committee. They have to look at the internal audit. You want to task for the main first one was looking after financial reporting and management controls. Second one we discussed was internal controls. Third one, risk management. Fourth one is now internal audit. Right? Internal audit. We'll take a break for 15 minutes and come to a meeting. Right? One here now. But we have to come by 1:30, yeah?
What are the problem Well, there's nothing that's just before that. Oh, Mr. Dulce meeting no para repeat peti que pe khala ke mixer para pin tapon kona gaya oh ये साथी mata mata ke nahi ये दिन में हम तुम्हारा पिंपल karena itu kan ini dari kata ini kan sahabat nah bisa oh ini bagi Colombo ya kalau bulan Mei office teh kan jadi ya anda bulan itu mau bulan ada bulan ini ambil pas garden office kita lah office teh kalau ada dia tinggi sampai anda company itu bulan ya anda bulan ini tidak tinggi tidak bulan tu ada pakai bulan apa pakai glasses की manager में office tinggi nah kita sebut deliver की कोई office product की अंदर Ating ada na yun.
Oh, yeah, the funny comment. Okay, guys, we'll start now. Right. So when it comes to oversight of internal audit, you saw in the diagram, can you remember when I was talking about the model, corporate governance model, in that you saw that the internal audit function needs to report to but audit committee. I can't bring that slide now because it's not there, not connected to my laptop, so I can't bring that. Okay, there's one minute. Second way framework figure. Right? So in that, audit committee. So you can see that they need to overlook financial reporting process and how it is presented and risk management, and they are responsible for internal controls. Responsible in the sense they will supervise, they will overlook. Responsible means that they will always, because if you look at the what these lines means for, always monitoring. So you can, audit committee will monitor the financial reporting, audit committee will monitor the risk management, and audit committee will monitor the internal controls. So this is the part we looked. Now, internal controls, to ensure that internal controls function well, you have the internal audit. Internal controls හරියට වෙනවද කියලා බලන්න අපේ organizations වල internal audit එකක් තියෙනවා. So that internal audit function needs to communicate or report to audit committee. Right? So this internal auditor does not have any connection with the management. Right? So whatever the reporting, it should be done to the audit committee. So what we are focusing is now is on these internal audit function. The main cover right? These three, which is monitored by the audit committee: financial reporting, risk management, and internal controls. Now we are going to look at how the internal audit function connected to the audit committee. How is the supervision be done? So when you take that, in this, it says the audit committee needs to oversee the work of internal audit and ensure its work support the company's strategic objective and compliances. Whatever the internal audit that we are having, that internal audit function should support company strategy. For the strategy එක achieve කරන්න ඔක්කොම processes තියෙනවා. So ඒ processes වල තියෙන internal controls ඔක්කොම මේකට support කරන්න. Strategy achieve කරන්න support කරන්න. Right? Support the company's strategic objectives and the compliances. Every company has compliances. So your audit, internal audit needs to ensure that those compliances are being fulfilled through the controls we have. So in this, there are two things. First one, I don't know guys, this technology is killing. First part is reporting relationship. Second part is annual review of internal audit. So that means you need this oversight of internal audit consists of two parts. Customized reporting relationship. The other one is reviewing whether the internal audit function has how it is going on. So reporting in the sense, now you saw from that box, it has an arrow to audit committee. Internal audit එක තමයි reporting relationship එක කියන්නේ. එතකොට මේ reporting relationship එක how they are going to maintain that, right? So reporting relationship means internal audit normally reports to the audit committee for the following reason. Why can't they report to somebody else? Why do they need to report only to the audit committee? There are reasons for that, right? So this reporting relationship is what I showed you all in the diagram. So the reason for that reporting relationship are these 5 reasons, 4 reasons. First one is why they report to the audit committee is to maintain their independence. If they report to any other party means what? They have to report to the management. The board second audit committee. So rather than going to the management, they are reporting to the audit committee. Main reason is then only they can maintain their independence. If they were reporting to the management, what would happen? What do you think would happen? The main internal audit function eකට report කරන්න තිබ්බනම් management එකට what sort of a situation will exist? That whose things are being reported by the management issues. Am I correct? Right? So if they are reporting again to the management, can they maintain their independence? Not a parity to the managers like managers last. And you understand? So they won't be able to maintain their independence and do their job. If they were needed to report to management, that would be the problem. That is why they need to report to the audit committee. So when they are reporting to the audit committee, they are free to express what they are finding. Right? They are free to express. That is what is meant by to maintain their independence. Right? If you read, the audit committee should be able to take steps to ensure that internal audit remains independent and that its work is not compromised by pressure from operational management. Right? However, ඒගොල්ලන් handle that, ඒගොල්ලෝ report කරන්නේ audit committee එකට. ඒතර ඒගොල්ලෝ එහාට report කරන නිසා අනිත් අයගේ pressure ඒගොල්ලන්ට බලපාන්නේ නැහැ. So they can freely do what is expected from them. What is expected from them is to look after whether all the internal control systems are operating in the right way. Can අපේ internal audit function එකක් තියෙන්නේ නේද? To check whether internal controls which has been set is function in the way that it is expected. So if there are any issues, now they can freely point them out because they are now reporting to the audit committee, not to anybody else. So their independence can be maintained, right? How they are working, their independence can be maintained. This particularly applies if internal audit needs to review higher level strategic matters which are likely to be the responsibility of very senior management. So if they need to look at how senior managers, when they are doing, whether they have followed the controls that are there and all that, now easily can be done because they are reporting to the audit committee, not to anybody else, right? So that is the first reason why this reporting relationship is needed. Right. The second reason why this reporting relationship is important is provide the strategic oversight for internal audit. That means the committee has the responsibility for determining the strategy adopted by the internal audit. So when they are doing the internal audit, they need to have a strategy. Review how they are going to conduct their reviews. So there should be a strategy to do that. Since internal audit committee consists of auditors, financial expertise, they have the experience in audit now. So they can support this audit, internal audit function to develop their audit strategy. Right? They can always guide the internal control function to develop their audit strategy, how they should proceed with the audit. Right? That is the second benefit. Third one, provide the authority needed. Since the internal audit is now under the audit committee's supervision, they can get the access to certain documents which management is reluctant to show. Right? Because the authority is audit committee. The authority is පාවිච්චි කරලා ඒගොල්ලන්ට ඕනේ information එකට access ගන්න පුළුවන්. Fair enough, because they don't have to go behind anybody else. They can go to the audit committee and tell, we want to get these documents being tested. Then audit committee superior, so they will communicate to the managers. You have to give these documents to be reviewed. Right? You have to allow these processes to be reviewed. So that kind of authority which is needed for the audit committee can be get because they are under the audit committee, internal audit is under the audit committee. Right? That is what is said here. The need for internal audit to have whatever access is necessary to people and the documents, and that there should be no-go areas. And areas in the background access, fully access done. This the authority is coming from audit committee. The backing of the audit committee should reinforce the authority that internal audit has to enforce its demand. So whatever the things that they want to demand from the others, they can enforce it through audit committee. That is what it says. Right? Next one. Ensuring action taken for the audit opinion. The audit opinion action implement right? So that also can be pushed only because they are under the audit committee. Because audit committee needs to ensure that internal audit opinions being given, being implemented. Right? Audit committee push karla karavanna puluwan. When the internal audit reports to them that these issues are there, actions need to be taken, somebody with higher authority should be there to back them. Internal audit right? Internal audit function the opposing power comes from audit committee. That's what it says here. The audit committee should provide a forum for internal auditors' confusion to be considered fairly. It can also follow up the reports of internal audit by obtaining evidence of whether its recommendations have been implemented. The audit committee will give you a recommendation. So implement check audit committee. It has the authority to hold managers accountable if they have failed to take action. Right? So if the managers have not done what is recommended by internal audit to correct certain things, then audit committee can take actions. So because of these reasons, this reporting relationship between internal audit and audit committee is needed. Fair මෙහෙම තිබ්බේ නැත්නම් audit committee එකට stand වෙලා හරියට වැඩේ කරන්න බෑ. Right? Because they are under the audit committee, they have got the independence to do their task. Second one, they get the strategic oversight which is needed. Third one, they get the authority to get the access for the people and documents. Finally, they can ensure that actions which are recommended being implemented. මේ ඔක්කොම කරන්නේ පුළුවන් වෙලා තියෙන්නේ because they are reporting to the audit committee. Right? So that reporting relationship is supporting this. හරි එතකොට when it comes to I told you there are two things under this internal audit. The one is reporting relationship, which we discuss now. And the other thing is audit committee, apart from this reporting relationship, they need to review the internal audit function. Right? ඒගොල්ලන්ට තමයි පුළුවන් review කරන්න internal audit function එක. So reviewing the internal audit function means they are annually, they have to check what is the strategy they are using, right? Whether they are having enough resources, are they conducting their audits in the right way? ඒක තමයි reviewing the audit function. So that they ensure the reporting relationship as well as they overlook the audit function. තේරෙනවද දෙක? Right? Overlooking the audit function කියන්නේ මේක. Right? Review of the internal audit. The review should cover the formal terms of preferences and assess whether they are adequate. That means there should be somebody to overlook their function. So that part is done. So what are those things? They need to look at standards including objectivity, technical knowledge, professional standard of internal reviewers. Right? මේවා තියනවාද කියලා බලන්න. Internal review කරන අයගේ objectivity, technical knowledge and professional standards. Second one, scope including how much emphasis is given to different types of internal reviews. They will look at internal reviews or scope picker, the extent that they are going. Right? They need to understand, they need to look audit committee. Right? Kochara, එක sections internal audit එක කරනවා. What is the extent that they are going? That is what is meant by scope. Right? Then the resources, whether there is a number of staff, enough staff hours, and the technical and personal skills of the staff collectively sufficient for the work. They are required to do so. අපේ ළමයි ඉන්නවා campus එකේ internal lab එක. double okay. Internal audit function එකේ. My God, they don't give even one day off for the exams. ඒ තරම් පොඩි ළමයි ටිකක් දාගෙන මරවනවා. Right? That is like they don't give even සමහර ළමයි overnight වැඩ කරලා audit කරලා එනවා ළමයි paper එක ලියන්න. We feel sorry for them. Right? So that means they are not having enough resources, no? They are just taking the maximum use of the internal ළමයි. Very pathetic to see that. It was a history of now looking internal audited ළමයි are නැහැ. They come because we have agreements with them when we are sending people, students to their place. And in that agreement, we specifically say when they have exams, they have to give. They need to study, you know, they are going for internship, they are not permanent employees over there. Right? එතකොට දෙන්නේ නැහැ ඒක. ඒ වගේම හරි ප්‍රශ්න ළමයි final years ලා. සමහර ළමයි ඒක fail ඉතින් ගොඩක් ළමයි. ඩිග්‍රියක් fail වෙනවා කියන repeat වෙනවා කියන එක bad thing නේ. economic subject එකක් හරි. So those are the issues we can see. So this audit committee needs to look at whether the number of staff hours are enough, technical and personal skills of the staff is sufficient to conduct their activities. Then you have to check how are their reporting arrangements, how frequently are they reporting, what is the depth that they are reporting, that you need to check. Then their work plan, especially review of controls and coverage of high risk areas. Their work plans in the internal audit function, how depth are they giving to review the controls and high risk areas need to be looked at. Then how they are going to connect with external auditors, liaison with external auditors, because the internal auditors need to connect with external auditors, and that is done through the audit committee. So that how that connection will be there, and the results, internal audit results, what are the results and what should be done. So with regards to internal audit review, these are things that they do. Right? So under internal audit, you study two things. Reporting relationship is one, and the review of internal audit. Right. Now we are coming to the last one. How the audit committee connect with the external auditors. Right? So all together, so how the internal, how they connect with the external auditors. The audit committee's task here is, first one, audit committee is the one who is responsible for appointment and removal of the external auditors. They are the ones who will decide, are we going to continue with them or are we going to go with somebody else? Appointment and removal. Second one, consider whether there are any other threats to external audit independence. External audit independence threats whenever For example, in particular, the committee should consider non-audit services provided by external auditors, paying particular attention to whether there are maybe conflict of interest. So when it's come to the external auditors independence, they can't give non-audit services to the company. They compromise their independence. Tax consultancy or accounting outsource tax consultancy, accounting, risk management. So these things will be non-audit services. If you have given it to the external auditors, that compromise their independence, because you have an attachment with the external auditors through those things. Right? So we can't give, because that if they are doing non-audit services to the company, we can't take them as external auditors because they compromise their independence. Right? Or very particularly, you have to look at whether there are any conflict of interest. Because when they are internal, when they are doing non-audit services, they have personal interest towards the company. Right? Non-audit service. Personal interest there. The external auditors are true and fair, obviously. Right? Because the client true and fair external non-audit services connection damage relationship right? Therefore, audit committee needs to ensure that whoever been appointed as external auditors does not have any non-audit services with the company. Then discussing the scope of the external audit prior to start the audit. So prior to commencing the external audit, audit committee need to discuss the scope, the extent to which you are going to conduct the external audit. Right? This should include consideration of whether external audit's coverage of all the areas and location of the business is fair, and how much external audit we rely on the work of internal audit. Audit කරනවද? අපේ subsidiaries වලට යනවද? කොච්චරක් දුරට ඒ audit කරනවද? එහෙම නැත්නම් internal audit මත කොච්චරක් depend වෙනවද? Right? That kind of discussion will be done. Then acting as a forum for liaison between external auditor and internal auditor. මේ දෙක අතර මැද ඉන්න relationship එක build කරන්නේ මේ audit committee එක. Then helping the external auditor to obtain the information. Whatever the information they require, audit committee needs to ensure that that information is given to them, what they request. Right? And any issues are there in getting external auditors and information done they need to interfere and get the information for them. Then making themselves available to external auditors for consultation with or without the presence of company's management. If the auditors want to ask questions about the company, They need to always be ready to support them. Last one, dealing with any serious reservation with the external auditors may express either about the accounts, the records, the quality of company's management. So they need to take serious actions for the audit opinions given on these things. The main thing from the external audit perspective, they have to do. So what are the areas that we covered on the audit committee? What was the first one? Talk. First one was ensuring the financial reporting and management controls. Second one was internal controls. Third one, risk management. Fourth one, internal audit. Fifth one, connecting with external auditors. May paha, you have to know very well. Right? You have to know these 5 tasks because out of all these committees, this committee is the most important committee. Okay? Right. Then we are coming to the next one, remuneration. Nikolonge task So remuneration committee means the committee which decides the remuneration that should be given to the directors and executives. Right? So the package or the salary or other perks that you add to that should be reasonable enough. And Goda Prashna Kaling Adilla Tiyenama, one reason is this remuneration has been really big. Goda corporate scandals at this remuneration package had been really big. So the directors, the CEOs were getting huge salaries from the companies, and those salaries were not connected to their performances. So they were taking more salaries, but it was not connected to performance. That is why many companies were collapsed. So the remuneration, controlling that, became an important part of governance. As a result, they recommended that you should appoint a board to take care of remuneration of these people. Right? So if you take, at present, which I know, for finance companies, when you appoint a director, it says very clearly from the central bank, there is a minimum wage that they have recommended. Right? Minimum wage that they have recommended to be paid to a board member. That is there to ensure this, you are not paying people unreasonable manner, because that is kind of a, like, when you pay them, they will be tempted to take that and shut their mouth without inquiring on things. They මට හොඳට pay කරනවා board member හැටියට හම්බුකොට මේ ඕනේ නැති ප්‍රශ්න මේවා කරගෙන මේ board එකට කසල් දාන්න කියලා scene එකක් එනවනේ. Can you understand? So there are cases, nice scenarios are there where chairman, who is the CEO, is always giving high remuneration, perks, families and the benefits they build attachment where you shut their mouth. Right? When you take benefits, guys, can you talk? Right? You compromise your independence totally. Right? Benefits that is the problem that happens. Right? You can't stand and do things as what is needed, especially when it comes to non-executives. Non-executives are if you pay them unreasonably and you create attachment, they have to compromise their independence. That is why this remuneration committee being appointed to identify what is the right rate to be paid. And even not only that, they have to disclose what you are paying to the board of directors in the annual report. Right? They have to disclose their payment. Okay? So this remuneration committee, their role includes clearly adequate remuneration has to be paid to directors in order to attract and retain individuals of sufficient caliber. Make අඩුවෙන් ගෙවන්නත් බැලලා. ඒතකොට කවුරුත් දෙකට එන්නේ නැහැ. මගේ කාලේ අපරවදිනේ, right? Time matters a lot. So all these top people, who you invited to your board are reputed people. They don't want to spend time without getting any compensation. So you have to pay them sufficiently, but you can't pay them more also. Right? There should be a balance. So that balance need to be decided by this remuneration committee. Remuneration packages should be structured to ensure that individuals are motivated to achieve the performance levels that are in the company and shareholders' best interest as well as their personal interest. Right? So whatever the remuneration that you are giving should be motivated enough for them to work and achieve the performance that has been set. අපි කිව්වනේ performance ගැන කලින් directors performance we have talked about that. So that those performance they should be motivated to achieve as well as they should be motivated to do the best for the company shareholders. At the end, they also should be satisfied that they are getting enough money from doing this job. Right? So the remuneration කියන එක මේ ඔක්කොම cover කරන්න ඕනේ. They should be motivated to achieve their performance levels. They should be motivated to fulfill the shareholders' interest. And also, they should be happy. Self-interest also should be there. Otherwise, කාගේවත් ඒවා fulfill කරලා තමන් සතුටු නැත්තම් වැඩක් නැහැ. Right? So the remuneration that they get should support all three. However, directors being paid excessive salaries and bonuses has been seen as one of the major corporate abuse for many years. As a solution to this problem, the remuneration committee will be appointed. The remuneration committee plays a key role in establishing remuneration arrangement in order to be effective. The committee needs to determine both organization and general policy on the remuneration of executive directors, specific remuneration package for each director. Normally, this is our boundary for any director, and on top of that, you can add additional stuff. Full allowance, this allowance, that allowance, කියලා තමයි මේක වැඩි කරන්නේ. ඒක central bank එකේ අපේ codes වලින් කියලා තියෙනවා මෙච්චරයි ගෙවන්න පුළුවන් කියලා. හැබැයි එච්චර ගෙවුවොත් කවුරුත් attract කරගන්න බෑ. එතකොට මේකට allowances කියලා add කරලා පොඩක් කුඹනවා. Right? එහෙම තමයි directors like salary එක decide වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. Okay? එක seating එකට දන්න හැටියට they have to pay 100,000 one seating. ලේසි නෑනේ. ඒ වගේ ඒකට ඊපස් තව additional තියෙනවා perks add කරලා. That is how they deal. Right. The UK Corporate Governance Code suggests measures to ensure that the committee is independent, including requiring the committee to be staffed by independent non-executives. Guidance from Associate British Insurers stresses the importance of remuneration committee bring independent thought and scrutiny to the development and review process, together with understanding of drivers the business that contribute to shareholder value. So when you're deciding this remuneration of the directors, it's not something easy, as I said. Adwen do not, we can't bring the people that we want. Padian do not, it is a problem for the shareholders, right? So they have to make the right, they have to bring from their experience independent thought and scrutiny, right, to the development of and the review process. So when you're deciding remuneration policy, right, there are things that you have to look. The pay scale applied to each director's package, right? What is the pay scale for executives and non-executives? Proportion of different types of reward. So inside the package, what sort of allowances you are going to give? The period within which performance-related elements become payable, right? So, අපේ payment එකේ තියෙනවා fixed element එකකුයි performance related element එක. that performance related element එක කොහොමද pay කරන්නේ? කොහොමද performance එක connect කරන්නේ? Third one, what proportion of rewards should be related to measurable performance or enhanced? the මොන rewards the performance එක connect කරන්නේ. මොන amount එකද fixed pay කරන්නේ. මොන amount එකද performance එක relate කරන්නේ. Then shareholder value and the balance between short and long term performance elements. The short term performances බලන්න ඕනේ, long term impact තියෙන performances බලන්න, because these are board members. Right? So they take strategic decisions. So strategic decisions the performances relate කරන්න ඕනේ. Short term the actions that they take. Short term performance කියන්නේ මොනවද? How frequently they are attending the meeting. How frequently they are involved in discussions. Those are short term performance. Long term performance means the strategic support for the strategic decisions. Right? So the how you are going to connect these long term their performance to the package and short term performance to the package. Those things needs to be looked. Then transparency of directors' remuneration, including pension rights in the annual accounts. Whether they have pensions being given, certain categories only, pension only some companies, and that is for the one of their main one is there in the director for remuneration. Then not all the NEDs are getting remuneration, but if you are giving pension for them, that needs to be disclosed. Prominent starting partners or starting members, director board pension. Right? So the main elements remuneration package pay scale, what are the different proportion of different rewards in the package, period between which performance related elements become payable, and the performance related pay every month every 6 months the performance related payment the performance measure every month pay you have to evaluate the performance, and maybe if you are evaluating performance every 6 months, there are performance related payment every 6 months. But fixed amount attending the meetings, that amount you will pay. Right? And what proportion of reward should be related to measurable performances, then short-term, long-term performance elements and transparency. Now, other thing is, now when you have to decide what you are going to pay for your directors, you have to compare that with what others are paying. The company directors that is what is called positioning of the company. Right? So when we are deciding our remuneration package for our directors, it is a must that we position our company with other companies in the similar level. Right? When establishing remuneration policy, the remuneration committee has to take into account the position of its company relative to other companies. The UK Greenberry report highlighted number of factors which the remuneration committee should consider. Right? Api position kala balanna one anik company wala directors la me level එක අපේ company level එකේ ඉන්න directors වලට කොහොමද pay කරන්නේ කියලා. Right? That is a must positioning. Recruitment and retention difficulties. We need to consider how challenging for us to attract someone to our board and keep them compared to our competitors. Right? Whether it is easy when recruited company right? Then it is easy to recruit and retain them. Right? So you need to compare with your competitors how easy for us to attract and retain the directors. Second one, the behavior of others in the sector. Are the others companies are growing? Other companies are below you, right? So that kind of a search you have to do. Where are we positioned compared to the others? That is what is called behavior of other companies. Then the level of competition coming. Are we having competition? The competition, we are leading the competition, so the level of competition. Here what you are looking at is the behavior of others in the sector means, are they growing, right? Are they below us? That means the level. So competition means whether there are so many competitors in the market within our, in the same sector, or there are less competition. Then risk, challenges, complexity, diversity, and international spread of the business. In our business, we need to understand what are the risks, challenges, complexity, diversity, and international spread. Then you have to look at special expertise and understanding which we require to our board. Right? So by looking these things compared to your competitors is helpful for you to decide what sort of a package you are going to give. Right? Positioning කරන්නේ නැතුව the කාවත් directors ලව attract කරගන්න බෑ ළමයි. Especially MEPs ලව attract කරන්න බෑ. Right? Positioning is a very important part of remuneration committee when they are doing their task. So that's it for them. Then you have the last one, risk committee. The risk committee එක කරන්නේ අර අපි දැන් audit committee එකේ risk part එකක් තිබ්බනේ. මතක නේද? ඒක totally මේගොල්ලෝ handle කරනවා risk committee එක. So by the name itself, they are there to take over the risk aspect. Right? Company එකේ risk මොනවාද? risk manage කරන්නේ කොහොමද? ඒ ඔක්කොම handle කරන්නේ risk committee එක. Right? Boards also need to consider whether there should be a separate board committee with responsibility for monitoring and supervising risk identification and management. Whether මේ committee එකේ task එක මේ ඔක්කොම committee වල task supervising and monitoring නා ඒගොල්ලෝ කවුරුවත් මේ ගිහිල්ලා down level එකේ වැඩ කරන්නේ නැහැ. ඒගොල්ලෝ බලන්නේ මේව හරියට වෙනවද කියන එක හැමතිස්සෙම. Audit committee also does that. So the risk committee is also there to make sure monitoring and supervising of risk identification and management. If the board doesn't have a separate committee, UK Corporate Governance Code, the audit committee will be responsible for risk management. Companies that are involving significant financial market risk will often have a separate risk committee. Okay? Especially when the organizations are having high financial risk. High financial risk in banks and financial institutions. But ඒ වගේ මේ risk committee කියන එක must. Risk committee is a must. You have to have a risk committee. ගොඩාක් ඔයගොල්ලන් ගිහලා බලුවොත් all these banks and financial institutions in their corporate structure, you can see risk committee there. Right? For them, it's a must because their financial risk is so high. Therefore, they need to appoint a separate committee to look after that. A risk management committee can help to provide the supervision required. Clearly, proved to be effective, the members will collectively need a high level of financial expertise. So those who are appointed to the risk committee also should be coming from the background of financial expertise. But there is one difference here. For this committee, guys, you can appoint more executive directors. Now, we have to have more non-executives, because we have to maintain independence in those functions. But risk committee, again, they are telling that bring more executive directors because they are the people who know what is happening in the organizational level. So they will be good at managing the risks because they know what are the risks that are there. Unlike the other committees, for this committee, you can bring executive directors. Another committee will promote non-executive directors. But this committee, you can bring more executive directors to take over this but make sure they have enough financial expertise because the financial risk is critical risk. Right? We will study what are financial risk later on. So this is the last slide. What is the role and the function of the risk committee? What do they have to do? Evidence of companies that have operated a risk management committee suggests that such a committee will be far more effective if it has clear terms of reference. So these are the things that they have to look at. Approving the organization risk management strategy and risk management policy. Must be one. To manage risk, you have to have a risk management policy, right? You will study what is a risk management policy that details everything, right? The risk management policy and what are the risk management strategies that are there, we need to approve by the risk committee. Then reviewing reports on key risks prepared by operating units, management and the board. They need to review. Frequently they have to look at one of the company and the risk, right? Frequently means they have to decide 3 months, 6 months, annually that we have to look at what the risk that the organization is exposed to, right? That frequent review of the risk is important. So they will look into that. Mono risk company may be that. Then monitoring the overall exposure to risk and ensuring it remains within the limit, right? When it's come to risk, then they have to measure what is the exposure of that risk. The one above looked at what are the risks. Then you have to measure and see what is the impact of that risk, right? Whether that risk impact is something we can accept or something beyond which we can't handle. So you need to do an assessment of the risk. So those parts are there under risk management, how you are going to assess it, right? Monitor the overall exposure to risk and whether those risks are within the limit, because every organization has a risk appetite. The amount of risk that they are okay to take up. So the risk they have to take risk. So they need to understand if we want to take risk, what is the level that we are okay to take up. That is called the risk appetite. So the risk appetite can take a mulima decide company risk appetite. Now we are okay to take this much of risk. Every organization need to understand they have a risk appetite. So what they are telling here is you have to monitor the risk and see whether those risks are within our risk appetite. We have to take actions to manage that because we decide our risk appetite based on what our stakeholders, what our shareholders want to take up, right? What our board thinks. So whenever we are taking initiatives, we have to make sure that the risk that is coming from that initiative is within our risk appetite. Risk appetite risk failure the responsibility of the management. The risk appetite policy communicate. This is the risk appetite. We are okay with. So any decision that you take in an organization should be within that risk appetite. That is the boundary that you set. අපි ඕන දෙයක් කරනවා හැබැයි කරන එකේ රිස්ක් එක මෙතනින් එහාට වැඩි රිස්ක් එකක් අපි ගන්න නැහැ. ඒකයි මේ බවුන්ඩරි එක සෙට් කරන්නේ. Right? So that is what they are telling. Monitoring the overall risk, exposure to risk and ensure it remains within the limits. Limits කියන්නේ මේ risk appetite. Assessing the effectiveness of risk management system. This committee needs to look at whether we are having the right mechanisms to manage the risk. Assessing the effectiveness of risk management system. Providing early warnings to the board of risks that can come. When the calling warnings may risk end up on here, right? Providing early warnings to the board on emerging risk issues. Last one, in conjunction with the audit committee, review the company's statement on internal controls with reference to risk management. Internal control statement. When they are providing the internal control statement, this committee also needs to contribute for the part with regards to risk management. Internal controls, risk management, okay. Right? So these are the things that risk committee does. So all the committees are now over. Okay? So for this part also, guys, I have developed. Did you see the questions that I showed you last time? Right? So for board committees, have set some questions, right? Covering the full tube, right? Covering the full tube, I have developed these questions. So if you can answer these questions, means you have covered the tube. Make answers to upload you go and check, right? So I have covered questions for all the sections which I have done. I have given questions. I have given answers. So you can't say that I have not done questions. Now, very straightforward. See, what measures should the remuneration committee take to ensure that directors' remuneration is appropriate? Right? So the answers for these ones also I have given. Describe the role and the function of the nomination committee. What are the main duties of the audit committee? Is at least 3. We have studied 5, right? List at least 3. Explain why it is important for the audit committee to have at least one member with significant recent financial expertise. Then you have to connect and say audit committee does lot of internal audits, external audit, those things. So people with financial qualifications are the ones who have the audit knowledge. That is why you want people like that, right? So these things have to answer, right? So here there are few questions. Try this out. Question. The answer. What is the answer? How many are telling A? How many are telling A? 1. How many are telling B? How many are telling B? None. How many are telling C? Huh? How many are telling D? How many are telling D? Raise your hands up. Raise your hands up. You have to stand for something, you stand for something. The answer is D. You can't say Asif. Why? You don't appoint the chairman because chairman is holding a big position in the board. Right? Normally you don't appoint chairman to the audit committee because that also consists of a lot of big tasks. So if you take Asif, Asif is the chairman of the company. So we have to take Asif out. Right? Then Bertrand is the CEO, no? CEO can be executive director. So you can't take him also. Then you can take Chen because he is also a professional accountant and non-executive. So you can say Chen. Then Dona you can't take because he is finance director, executive. Then you can take because he is a legal advocate and a non-executive, right? And Frederick, you can take because the marketing director of a manufacturing company and he's a non-executive to us. So that combination, Shane, Esther and Frederick is the combination that suits mostly for the audit committee. Okay. Next one. Which of the following is the duty of the secretary of a listed public company? Why do you have to have a secretary now? This is a new word. Secretary can but you know there is always for the board meeting you need a secretary. So what is the task of a secretary according to your thinking? Secretary මොනවද කරනවා at the board meeting? Always there should be a secretary attending the company meeting. And he or she is the one who is taking the minutes. Right? Normally, who comes for that position? How do I get the secretary to appoint us? Which background? Legal. Yes. Lawyer can right? Legal background lawyer can because whenever there is an issue and clarification, you are referring to the secretary because he is having the legal knowledge on tackling things. That is why we bring a lawyer as a secretary to the company. Because we can refer to him to clarify the legal aspects of many things. Right? We have this lawyer network. Secretary with a point because we need the legal clarification, as I said. So make a monada pe answer ke main na. Think. Which one? Who does the first one? Maintaining the order at board meeting. Who does that? Chairman. Right? Clarifying the terms of reference of the board meeting. That is the task of the secretary. Right? He will be referred when you need clarification. Secretary will be referred to clarify on those things. Ensuring that all directors contribute fully to discussions at board meetings. Chairman. Last one, reporting to the board on the operational performance for the last quarter. CEO. Yes. Next question. The board of directors of JJJ company has decided to increase the basic salary of its chief executive officer by 20% in order to bring her pay into line with those occupying similar positions in the industry. This action will achieve which of the following purpose? What is the answer for this, guys? What's the answer? Huh? A. How many of you think it's A? One and B. The answer is A. Because only thing that we can be sure is improve the prospect of retaining the chief accounting executive officer because we have paid in par with the others. Other things are beyond our control. It's up to the executive to perform. Only thing we can ensure is this one. That this person will stay in this job. අපිට ෂුවර් කරන්න පුළුවන් ද 120 කින් පඩි වැඩි කරා කියලා 120 කින් productivity එක වැඩි වෙයි කියලා? No, we can't assure that. Motivate the chief executive officer to achieve the long-term targets. No, we can't assure that. That's up to her, right? Create greater job satisfaction. She may be not satisfied even you increase. Only thing we can assure is this person will stay in the job because we have given the same amount as what others are offering. They have shifted to one end, right? That's the thing. The last one. Last one shall make it. There's one to finish. Right? It says here, we quickly finish, right? You are the secretary of a medium-sized listed company. The company has recently appointed a new chairman of the audit committee. So each of these committees have their own chairman, sir, who has been asked by the chairman of the board of directors to organize the board annual review of the system of internal controls. The audit committee chairman te කියලා තියෙනවා board chairman review කරන්න කියලා system of internal control. Have been appointed only recently. The audit committee chairman does not fully understand why the review is necessary. So here, internal control like a review of the internal control function. How it should be carried out. He is aware that company is expected to follow the third rule guidelines in carrying out the review. He thinks that you will be able to provide him with useful information and offer some advice. Now, this is about reviewing your internal control system, which audit committee is supposed to do. Suggest measures that might be taken by the audit committee on behalf of the board to carry out the review of the effectiveness of system of internal controls. Right? If you're going to make internal control system එක review කරන්න, they have to do these things. First of all, they have to establish the review procedure. ඒක review කරන procedure එක set කරන්න. කොහොමද අපි review කරන්නේ? Then engage with internal and external auditors. Collaborate with internal auditors to gather insights on the current state of internal controls and engage with external auditors to provide an independent assessment of the internal controls. Risk assessment, conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to identify potential areas of concerns and look whether for these potential areas there are controls. Then you have to review the document. You have to get the management feedback, employee awareness, monitoring and follow-up. Make the internal control review. Right? This is a question which I am interested so much. How do you do the internal review of your, how do you do the review of your internal controls? Right? Mama made the questions on fiscal exam. Hari, මෙතනින් එහාට questions නැහැ. So mama had questions already being given to you all. Okay? So please make sure you know these things very well because in your papers, my area is the area where you can score marks very easily. For the risk management ethics applications are very challenging. Right? Because one areas here they are easy to answer. Right? CEO, chairman, board, right? So make sure you know the corporate board governance. This is the section which is like board governance. No, you know it very well. Right? Now we finish the last bit, Sri Lankan one. Take it. You need to know this. Right. So when it's come to Sri Lankan Corporate Governance Code, right? So if you go to the SEC website, right? Securities and Exchange Commission website, you can get this. Right? It says that good corporate governance is globally accepted, is fundamental to organization competitiveness, growth, and sustainability. There is a great attention on board of directors to discharge their duties with high ethical values and accountability in their commitment to good governance practices. Blah, blah, blah. මෙතන තියෙනවා the SEC as the apex regulator of Sri Lankan capital market is committed to maintain high standard of corporate governance in order to maintain market integrity. In view of this broader objective, the SEC, together with Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka, published the Code of Best Practice of Corporate Governance in year 2008, and this was reviewed in 2013 in order to establish good corporate governance practices in Sri Lankan capital market. But now this has also been revised in 2017. So in 2008 we got the first corporate governance code developed. It was 13 there was a revision, and 17 is the latest version we have. Now when you take, we have to know the evolution a bit, how this Sri Lankan corporate governance code was developed. So I have developed a couple of slides, but more than that, if you want to get someone is interested, this is the article now. Model right? Here. This article, right? Corporate governance development in Sri Lanka is the one that I have summarized into that slides. Right? This talks about how the corporate governance system developed. So they are the ones who showed this diagram also. Correct? So this, if you want, anybody wants the detailed version, you can get it from here. I have uploaded it to the internet. Okay? Here I have put the summarized version. So if you look at the pre-regulation era, where before 2008, before specific corporate governance regulations were introduced, Sri Lankan companies were guided by company law. Right? Manchivane company law proceeds over anything here. So before these corporate governance codes, I think then asking yeah. Yeah, we were coming from Namulla to Colombo. I think my husband used the effort more than million times because the people were coming from Namulla to Colombo. People on going to that side have used the full road, and there is no way these bicycle people who are going in the bicycles, no discipline at all. I think no rules. It was so hard, it took us 5 hours to come from Dambulla to Kalam. Right? So, yeah, money no. I mean, he's in the hundred and one that Dansalan that go on piece to Hyderabad. They gave no money after. Pitibase Bahane, no, Ani Minister Hirana, this was there now. On the spot, stop the vehicle, Okomahan and Bahino, Yana, Dansa. Right? That much irresponsible these people are. It is a money dancer at the Pauna, dancer, Karani, I kill Hituna Minister. Which the Kanaka, Ani Minister, the Kanaka, Karani, Hiela. Right, Mangola Yavana make you well, so we finish it soon. Right? So you can see that. So The law was the main thing which guided all these companies before the corporate governance code was developed. Right? Then what happened was the first Sri Lankan corporate governance code actually introduced in 1997 by CS Sri Lanka to deal with financial aspects of the listed companies. So in that one, they were mainly concentrated on structure and responsibility of board of directors, what the auditor should supposed to do, and the rights and responsibility of shareholders. So 1997 වල CS Sri Lanka එකේ code එකක් introduce කරා. So that code was covering this, right? Financial aspect කියන්නේ මේ board behavior impact on the financial usage නේ ඒකයි කියන්නේ financial aspect කියලා. So they were focusing on these three: structure and responsibility, role of the auditors, rights and responsibility of shareholders. Then what happened was in 1997, the 1997 code was replaced ICSL Code of Best Practice on Corporate Governance in March 2003. ඒක තමයි අර slide එකේ තිබ්බේ කලින් එකේ slide එක. It focuses is much larger than the 1997 code and covers many aspects of corporate governance, including directors, shareholders, and auditors. Not only the financial aspects, but other areas as well. Look at this. Huh? The essential characteristics of these Sri Lankan code is that they were voluntary. Compulsory. Sri Lanka never introduced any rule-based corporate governance practice. It was always what? Principle-based. So that they were only guidelines and it was not mandatory. Hence, they were only recommended to be followed by listed companies. Right? They were voluntary and only through other mechanisms they were listing rules දාලා compulsory කරා කියලා. The listing rules and only companies are listed on the stock market now. So through listing rules they made it compulsory, but the code came as voluntary. But the other part is, in addition, there were a number of supplementary codes to ICSL code to deal with specific aspects of areas of corporate governance. So in 2003 code එකට අමතරව මේකත් එක්ක තව supplementary codes තිබ්බා. Those supplementary codes are these ones. Right? ICSL Code of Best Practice on Audit Committee. Then Code of Corporate Governance of bank and other financial institutions. Guidelines for listed companies. In Sri Lanka, actually companies were confused. They had the voluntary code and they had some other supplementary codes. It was like a mess. You can understand, right? So here you have the code which was developed in 2003. Then again Chartered Institute issued another code which is known as Code of Best Practice for Audit Committee. Mangoni Audit Committee is the most important committee here. So make that committee more important for Sri Lankan context. They issued the Audit Committee 2002. Then Central Bank Committee, because the financial institutions were having a lot of issues. So they wanted to make financial institutions governance more stronger. Therefore, they came up with these two. Right? Institutions ගොඩක් දැන් මේ corporate governance codes හදනවා පේනවද? Firstly, it was CS Sri Lanka, right? Made the 1997 code. Then they revised it in 2008. Then CS Sri Lanka again came up with another code here. Plus, now Central Bank is also issuing two codes to make it stronger. And this was mostly relevant for banks and financial institutions. Right? Code of Corporate Governance of banks and other financial institutions and guidelines for listed companies in respect of audit and audit committee. And this was issued by SEC. None of these codes were also mandatory and the companies were expected to adopt them voluntarily. Further, the presence of number of rules and guidelines indicate lack of uniformity in corporate governance rules in the country. And these codes were always not in line with each other. So they were sometimes conflicting. Right? Repeat. So there were issues like this. So later on, what they did was, with the introduction of CSE listing rules in 2007, corporate big governance became mandatory for listed companies in April 2008. These mandatory rules have been developed through joint initiative of Chartered Institution and SEC in consultancy with Colombo Stock Exchange. CSE, right? SEC is the authority. Colombo Stock Exchange is the where you do the stock trading. It's not a public company. Yeah? Not a public company. Sorry, it's not a private public organization. It's a private organization. Okay. Listing rules require companies to deal with 6 rules. Then our listing rule like 2007 wala. The listing rule like they were very critical on 6 things. Right? What are those 6 things? Minimum number of non-executives and independent directors should be in the board. The criteria determine their independence as non-executive directors. Disclosure required to be made in respect of directors. Minimum requirements to be met in respect of audit committee and remuneration committee. So these 6 were main things that were brought under listing rules in 2008. To support the mandatory CSE listing rule, ICS, Chartered Institute, jointly with SEC, revised everything and came up with 2008 new code. At time was confusing. A listing rule list compulsory. So what they did was to make things simpler. They revised the code, and 2008 they came up with new code called best practicing revised code of best practice in 2008. So this code was used for many years until 2013, and it is considered as a comprehensive code covering many aspects of corporate governance. And not only these listing areas, but right? These are called 6 listing rules. Include but they brought other areas, which are appointment to the board. Appointment, they talked about audit committee and remuneration only. But now they introduced the nomination, re-election of directors, performance evaluation, separation of role of chairman and CEO, how to supply information to directors, board and the board committee meeting, internal controls, financial reporting, may cover up 2008 code. Right? Finally, 2008 code was there, but on top of that, central bank, what they did was, they also issue a mandatory code for banks telling banking and election 2000, this one. With the voluntary code, central bank introduced this one. A Central Bank Act of Banking Act of Direction number 1 in 2008, and this is for licensed commercial bank in Sri Lanka. Then what happened was, again, Central Bank issued Direction number 3, 2008 for the corporate governance of finance companies. So altogether, now we have 2008 corporate governance code, and Central Bank issued these 2. Right? So this is how the initial structure of corporate governance being for companies in Sri Lanka. 1997 doing Mave, right? Then this was revised in 2003. 2003 after that, listing rule එක ගෙනාවා 2007 වල listing rule එක නිසා corporate governance code එක ආයෙ revise කරා 2008. With that revision, the central bank also introduced another tool which is for banks, commercial bank, and financial institutions. That's all. Then 2013 best practice, it is the new one introduced after that. They covered 10 elements. Many 10 elements you already know now. I go through that. Same thing what we studied on the board committee, board membership. Now they are bringing here. You can read and understand. In 2003, first one they said was every public company should be headed by a board, which should direct, lead, and control the company. Right? So they are talking about what is board, what they have to do, what should be the board meetings, and how about the entrepreneurial leadership? Entrepreneurial leadership kata kara, boards gonna kata kara. One of their role is to give entrepreneurial leadership. Then they have to have legal independent decision making. Then they should appoint a company secretary, and director should dictate adequate time and effort for the matters. Training them clauses include. We have studied all that. Board we have studied. So now I'm showing how the Sri Lankan code has included those things. So I don't want to spend that. Then they are talking about having a balanced executive and non-executive directors. Second point. It's preferable for the board to have a balance of executive and non-executive, such that no individual or small group of individuals can dominate the board decision making. Here they are defining who are non-executives, how many non-executives should be there, and all that. Right? Both CEO and the chairman are the same. Majority should include NEDs. Right? Chairman is CEO, board again majority only non-executive direction. Then they talk about further to ensure their independent use argument sufficient consideration. Chairman should hold meetings with NEDs only. At least once a year. We have done those things. Then how to maintain the independence of NEDs. How to make sure NEDs are independent. Right? NEDs like independent maintenance. Last week, the last few slides, many of you were not there. After the break, we did that. Right? How to maintain their independence. Right? You have to give a declaration telling you are independent, you don't have personal interest and all that. And the last one, can you remember out of the, in some instance, it appears that chairman and CEO is the same person. You have to appoint senior independent director. Non-executive directors like one person you have to appoint as a senior executive director to talk with the shareholders and the board members. So these things we have talked. The third one is there should be a formal and transparent procedure for the appointment of directors. So they talk about appointment of the directors, where nomination committee, what we discussed today, what they have to follow. Then board should periodically appraise their performance. So board performance evaluation, the checklist, all that what we discussed, now they are bringing here. No director should be involved in deciding his or her remuneration. So this part talks about appointing the remuneration committee and allowing them to decide the remuneration. The level of remuneration of both executive and non-executive directors should be sufficient to attract and run. So whatever you are paying to them should be attractive and should be supposed to serve the purpose what we discuss now. Explain කරන්න points ටික පෙන්නනවා විතරයි because boring ළමයි. එකම දේ ආයෙ මෙතනක් කියන්න. Right? The board should implement effective communication with shareholders. So this part talks about how you are going to connect with the shareholders, how you need to communicate with the shareholders. The board should present a balanced and understandable assessment of company's financial performance, financial position, performance and prospect. Right? All stakeholders of a company may not have the same level of intelligence. Therefore, it is vital that the board should present a balanced and understandable assessment of company's financial position to shareholders. When you are disclosing your information, you have to make sure that හැම shareholderටම අපි හිතන knowledge එක නැහැ. ඒතකොට හැමෝටම මේක කියවලා පුළුවන්. Understand කරගන්න පුළුවන් විදිහට information දෙන්න ඕනේ. That is what they are expecting here. That this requirement extended to interim and other price-sensitive public reports in regulators and statutory required information. So whenever you are giving information about the organization, that information should be something that anyone can understand. It should be in that simple manner. Further, under the director's report should contain declaration as to the financial position of the company, and if the company is unable to make any of the above declaration, it should be explained why financial declaration cannot be given. When the annual report is taken into consideration, it should contain statements setting out responsibilities of the board. Right? Make financial reporting outcome. There should be a statement telling what was the responsibility of the board with regards to its financial reporting. Right? Moreover, to avoid any financial crisis, where net assets of the company are far below of 5% of the value of shareholders' fund, you have to have an extraordinary general meeting and discuss what you need to do. This is a must, right? If there is a financial crisis and if your net assets fall below 50% of the value of the company, you need to have a general meeting. It's about risk management. Right? Relationship with company auditors. And this is the 2017, the latest one. Right? Maybe what they have is they have included something for board composition. How many executive and non-executive? How frequently you should have board meetings? Board role? Specimen of audit committee charter. Introduction of what is related party transaction. They have included cyber security and Internet of Things in the new one. And they also have included ESG reporting and expanding cooperative reporting included these things, these reporting, right? These are not new things for me to teach, right? You can read and understand these parts. Okay, so Sri Lankan context, why I took it to the last is after teaching everything, it's just a matter of looking at what was included in Sri Lankan context. So now you know the core areas that should be there in corporate governance practice. So this just putting those things into the Sri Lankan context is what we went just through the following slides. Okay. So this is all coming for the corporate governance part. Alright. The main just know what are the key areas which is covered by Sri Lankan corporate governance. That's all. Okay. So that's the end. That's the end. So questions have been given. If you have anything, any clarification needed, my email is there in all these fields. My email, you can drop a mail. If you are not coming to the quiz, if you are unable to come to the quiz, you have to inform me beforehand. Otherwise, You have to give me reasons why you're unable to attend. එදා උදේට මට උනේ හැදුනා මගේ computer එක හැදුනා. There was no access. Sorry, not going to accept any of those things. Right? එදා දවසේ එකපාරට මුණ හැදෙන්නේ නැහැ ළමයි. Right? මුණ හැදෙනවා නම් දෙක හැදෙනවා නම් ඊට කලින් I have been teaching for now 15 plus years. I know what you are doing. Right? ඒක නිසා right, may only 1 hour exam, only 45 minutes exam, not a hard one, so finish it off, right, rather than doing it later. About our badges and then right, you do it at that time, finish off. Don't ask me to give the exam again, I will not give up. Right, so my part is over. If you have anything, please drop a mail to me. So when Rahman finishes his part, he will discuss what is the structure. So most probably from my part, you will get, normally what we give is 5 questions. So far what I have been given was 5 questions. Out of that, 2 questions will be coming from corporate governance, which is easy now, right? So 2 questions from this. 2 questions from risk and 1 question from ethics. That is how we normally structure the paper. Okay? මේ part එක අමාරු නෑ ළමයි. Score කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඒක නිසා only thing is you have to know the sections, the connections and everything clearly. Okay? So if you have anything, just drop a mail. I will answer. Thank you.